Before there were supermarkets or canned goods, dinner for the American mountain folks was cooked by hand, by fire, and with sheer resilience. They turned cornmeal, salted meat, and wild greens into meals that fed the whole family, sometimes even the entire village. Today, let's explore 25 dinners that once warmed the mountains, which now only exist in memory and the taste of the past. Corn pone. Let's go back to the old mountain kitchen where bread wasn't something sliced and pre-packaged, but something that had to be earned through cleverness and perseverance. Corn pone was the basic everyday meal and could last longer than store-bought loaves for weeks. This food was the foundation for survival from the late 1800s right up to the Great Depression. And it was especially popular when wheat flour commanded precious cash that simple families just didn't have. Making corn pone was a pure art form. The mountain woman would mix coarse cornmeal with just enough water or buttermilk to create a thick mixture. They might add a little salt and sometimes bacon grease for richness, giving a deeper flavor to this simple meal. Then the mixture was shaped by hand into flat, thick cakes, which were baked on hot stones next to the fire or fried in a cast iron skillet over hot coals. A mountain woman's reputation was often tied to the taste of the corn pone she made. A perfect corn pone had to be an art form. It needed a crust that cracked crisply on the outside, while the inside had to be dense and moist with a slightly gritty texture. It's a pity that the packaged corn pone mixes we see today, while convenient, just can't compare to the lasting power and honest flavor of the traditional hand-mixed kind. Apple stack cake. No mountain wedding was complete without this towering cake, often called a sweet mountain peak. Apple stack cake is a powerful testament to community cooperation and Appalachian ingenuity. This dish dates back to the 1800s because sugar was very expensive and hard to come by in mountain communities. Instead of fancy frosting, they used dried apples, cooked down into a thick spiced filling that acted like mortar. The apple filling was cooked slowly with molasses, cinnamon, and sometimes a splash of moonshine for a deep, slightly pungent flavor. The specialty lies in the community tradition. The cake was assembled with 6 to 12 thin layers, and traditionally, each wedding guest would bring one layer of cake. Once assembled, the cake was wrapped in cloth and left to set for several days, allowing the flavors to marry and deepen. The finished cake looks like a sweet mountain peak and tastes like condensed autumn, capable of feeding up to 50 people, showcasing community organizing skills and kitchen resourcefulness. Nothing signals that winter is ending and life is fiercely returning quite like the smell of Groundhog Stew. Groundhogs are plump, slow-moving animals, usually hunted in February after they wake up from hibernation. This is the best time because they have stored up fat, which makes the meat tender and flavorful. To remove the wild, gamey smell, a crucial step is soaking the meat overnight in salt water. Then it's browned in lard to create a crust and slowly simmered with water, wild onions, and vegetables, stored over the winter, like potatoes, carrots, and turnips. The stew must cook for many hours over a wood fire until the meat falls right off the bone. This pot of Groundhog Stew was a precious source of protein during the coldest days. The final broth turns golden and rich, offering a hearty flavor for times of scarcity. It wasn't just food, it was the taste of warmth and resilience. Don't let these recipes disappear again. Please subscribe and join our nostalgic family for more forgotten favorite dishes. Possum and sweet potatoes. You wouldn't believe that this dish made from small game was served for Sunday dinner and considered fine dining in mountain communities. It represented the peak of Appalachian game cooking artistry. Opossums were usually caught in late fall after they had feasted on the abundant persimmons and acorns on the trees. Then eating these natural sweet fruits gave their meat surprisingly sweet flavor. After skinning, cleaning, scrubbing thoroughly, and soaking overnight in salt water, the animal was parboiled, partially boiled, to remove the wild smell. Then it was stuffed with sweet potatoes, wild onions, and sage. The opossum was roasted slowly in a Dutch oven buried in coals, basted frequently with its own grease mixed with molasses. The sweet potatoes inside absorbed the rich, slightly sweet pan drippings, while the skin became crispy and golden. This was a feast worthy of special occasions, enough to make city folks reconsider their assumptions about rural cuisine. Pickled pig's feet. Pickled pig's feet was a prized delicacy, considered a celebratory dish and a perfect testament to the mountain philosophy of waste not, want not. It ensured that nothing went unused during the family's annual hog butchering. The pig's feet were scrubbed thoroughly and boiled until the meat was tender and the skin pliable. Then, hot vinegar seasoned with bay leaves, peppercorns, and salt was poured over the cooked feet. This dish needed several weeks to cure in crocks or glass jars. This pickling method provided protein-rich nutrition through the long winters. The meat would fall off the bone, the skin smooth and permeated with the tangy spiced vinegar, especially the broth. Rich in gelatin, was considered particularly nutritious for pregnant women and growing children. This dish was usually eaten cold with fresh corn pone to soak up all the rich, tangy brine. Hominy. Hominy is a kind of puffed white corn, a dish that at first glance looks like something from another planet, but it's one of the most nutritious foods the mountain people learned how to prepare. The woman would pour boiling lye water from wood ash over dried corn kernels and soak them for several days. Then, a crucial step was rinsing these kernels repeatedly in clear spring water to completely remove the chemicals. The magic happens when the corn husk loosens and the kernels transform, doubling in size, turning a ghostly white color and containing more nutrition than regular corn. The finished hominy is an excellent source of carbohydrates and protein. It could be boiled into a hearty porridge, fried crisp in lard, or dried to store for harsh winters. Hominy proves the cleverness of the Appalachian people, turning a simple ingredient into a precious nutritional source. Sadly, the canned hominy we see on supermarket shelves today is just a pale shadow of the hand-processed kind. Squirrel and dumplings is a hearty dish that could turn small game into a meal stretched far enough to feed unexpected guests. When winter meat supplies were running low, squirrels were abundant in every valley and mountainside. Preparing this dish was considered essential knowledge for mountain wives. Squirrel hunting was also an important rite of passage for mountain boys. After cleaning and jointing 2 or 3 squirrels, the meat was browned in bacon grease. Then the meat was simmered with water, wild onions, and herbs until it fell off the bone. Dumplings made from flour, salt, water, or milk, rolled thin and cut into strips, were dropped into the boiling broth. The dumplings puffed up and soaked up the rich, slightly gamey flavor. This dish was economical. One pot could feed a family for 2 meals and provided a feeling like complete warmth. Corn dodgers. Corn dodgers are a simple corn cake, once a portable survival food that kept mountain people full for days on the trail. The name is believed to come from Civil War soldiers who had to dodge bullets while eating them. The recipe is incredibly simple: coarse cornmeal mixed with just enough water to form a stiff dough. This food was designed to last for weeks without spoiling. They were the reliable daily bread for families on the frontier when wheat flour wasn't available or was too expensive. The corn cakes were baked on hot rocks around a fire or fried in a skillet until they formed a hard, golden crust. This food wasn't meant to be eaten fresh. When hungry, people gnawed on them like hardtack, having to let saliva slowly soften the tough crust. This dish tasted like condensed corn and the determination of a whole generation to survive. Turtle soup with cornbread. This meal was anything but ordinary. Snapping turtle meat was an important source of protein from the mountain streams and ponds. Turtle soup was considered a delicacy comparable to anything served in fancy city hotels. Catching a snapping turtle weighing 20 pounds or more required courage and skill. Turtle meat is tender, tasting like a cross between chicken and fish. The meat was cut into pieces and slowly simmered with wild onions, herbs, and root vegetables until it melted apart. The preparation was elaborate. Some cooks even added hard-boiled eggs and a splash of vinegar for tanginess, fitting its special status. The finished soup was thick, rich, and deeply flavored. This dish was reserved for special occasions and the family's honored guests. Rabbit fricassee. Completely different from simple fried rabbit, creamed rabbit fricassee was an elegant dish made from wild rabbit, demanding sophistication and patience in the kitchen. Wild rabbit was an abundant, year-round protein source for mountain families. Many mountain folks also raised rabbits because they bred quickly and were the cheapest source of meat. Young rabbit meat was jointed and soaked in salt water to remove any smell. Then, the meat was coated in seasoned flour and slowly browned in bacon grease. The meat was covered with water or milk and gently simmered with wild onions and herbs until it almost fell off the bone. The cooking liquid was thickened with flour to create a velvety sauce, and wild mushrooms or early spring greens might be added if available. The finished creamy stew was served over hot biscuits or corn pone, proving that mountain cooking could be just as refined as any city cuisine. Fried catfish and hush puppies. This was the centerpiece of the legendary fish fries that brought whole communities together. Catfish were abundant in the mountain streams. To remove the natural muddy taste, fresh-caught catfish fillets were soaked in buttermilk. Then, the fish was coated in seasoned cornmeal and fried in hot lard. The catfish meat was white, firm, surprisingly sweet, and mild. Accompanying the fried fish were hush puppies, fried cornmeal balls mixed with chopped onions, dropped by spoonfuls into the same hot grease. The fun legend says hush puppies got their name from cooks tossing them to barking dogs to silence them. Hush puppies! This combination satisfied both body and soul, proving that mountain food could rival any coastal seafood. Do you remember the most creative starvation food during the hard times? Tell me about the childhood dish you remember most and share your story in the comments below. Mock apple pie. This pie was a masterpiece of ingenuity from the Depression and World War II rationing era. A clever dish that tricked everyone with a flavor exactly like real apple pie, but without using any apples. Fresh apples were scarce and expensive during hard times, forcing home cooks to come up with creative solutions. The secret ingredient to create the crisp yet soft texture of cooked apples was Ritz crackers. These crackers were crushed into pieces and layered into the pie crust. Then, a complex syrup was created from water, sugar, cream of tartar, and lemon juice. The cream of tartar and lemon juice played a key role in mimicking the natural acidity and sugar of apples. The syrup was poured over the crackers, seasoned with cinnamon and nutmeg to complete the flavor. When baked, the crackers absorbed the syrup, swelled and softened, turning into something with the exact texture and taste of cooked apples. This pie represents wartime ingenuity at its peak, a symbol of making do with what you have in tough circumstances. Even the name leather breeches tells a story. These green beans were turned into leather-like strips that could hang from the rafters all winter, and when dried, they rattled like leather when touched. This was an ancient preservation method, turning summer abundance into winter nutrition without needing expensive canning equipment or precious salt. Young, tender green beans were strung onto thick thread, forming long garlands. These garlands were then hung from kitchen rafters, porch ceilings, or attic beams, where air could circulate well to dry them out. This method kept families eating vegetables long after the gardens were buried under snow. When ready to use, the dried beans were soaked overnight to rehydrate, then cooked slowly with fatback or bacon until tender. The finished beans have a deep, slightly smoky, distinctive flavor. Before refrigeration, this fatback was the kind of bacon that never went bad. It was the gold standard of mountain cuisine, playing a crucial role in providing flavor and necessary calories to help families survive harsh winters when fresh food was scarce. Fatback consists of thick slabs of pure fat from the hog's back. They were properly salted to store for months. The fat was sliced thin and fried slowly until it rendered out into crispy cracklings swimming in pure lard. Both the cracklings and the rendered fat were culinary gold. Nothing was wasted. Fatback was also a convenient portable source of protein that could be carried on hunting trips or while working the fields. A small piece of fatback could turn a pot of beans or greens from subsistence food into something almost luxurious. Southern beans and cornbread. This dish wasn't just a meal, it was the foundation of mountain survival, a perfect nutritional pairing of slow-cooked dried beans and crispy cornbread. Mountain families grew their own beans that tolerated the harsh weather and poor soil. Dried beans, often pinto or navy, were soaked overnight, then cooked slowly for hours with a piece of fatback or a ham hock until they became smooth and rich. The magic is that this combination creates a complete protein comparable in nutritional value to expensive meat. The process of cooking the beans was an art passed down through generations. The cornbread was mixed fresh, using stone-ground cornmeal, buttermilk, and a touch of bacon grease, baked in a cast-iron skillet. The cornbread has a crispy crust on the bottom, perfect for soaking up all the rich bean liquid. This is the backbone of Appalachian cuisine and the reason mountain families could survive in isolation for generations. Corn chowder. Late summer, when the sweet corn peaked, was a wonderful time to celebrate the harvest with thick corn chowder. For mountain people, nothing was more valuable than taking advantage of nature's bounty to prepare for the lean days ahead. This soup wasn't just a simple stew. It was the art of extracting maximum flavor and texture from raw ingredients. The secret to corn chowder's rich flavor and perfect thickness lies in a technique only experienced mountain women mastered. They didn't just cut the kernels off the cob, they also carefully scraped the cobs to extract the sweet, milky liquid. The unique thing is that this milky liquid from the corn cob naturally thickens the soup without needing flour or cream. This was especially important since the dish was designed to be delicious even when dairy products like fresh cream were scarce in mountain communities. This soup offers the natural sweetness of the corn, the saltiness of the pork, and a deeply satisfying warm feeling. Enjoying corn chowder feels like savoring a bowl full of summer sun that can warm the heart during the first chilly days of fall. Mess of wild greens. For mountain families who had gone through a long winter on salted meat, dried beans, and stored root vegetables, the appearance of wild greens signaled spring and was not just a dietary change, but an assurance of health and survival. This food could save families from scurvy, adding fresh vitamins essential for tired bodies. They would gather greens like purslane, amaranth, wild spinach, dandelion greens, and many other varieties. Most of these wild greens often had to be boiled twice to remove bitterness and potential toxins before they could be safely consumed. After the bitterness and toxins were removed, the greens were quickly sautéed with bacon grease or fatback to add flavor and provide essential fats and nutrients that were severely lacking. This process not only made the greens more palatable, but also helped add much-needed calories and protein. The return of the greens was not just a dietary change, it was a true ceremony showcasing the community's self-sufficiency and resilience. Ramp dinner. Spring truly arrived when ramps, wild leeks, started growing, and their pungent smell was so strong that the whole village knew who had eaten what the night before. Ramps are a type of wild leek, abundant in shady valleys, and harvesting them was often a huge communal effort, providing fresh food and powerful seasoning. The ramps were thoroughly cleaned. Then they were prepared simply but effectively, fried with eggs, bacon, or potatoes. Some who preferred their pungency even ate them raw with cornbread and beans. The onion garlic flavor of ramps is strong enough to clear out a room. Their pungent odor could even be detected on the breath for a week after eating. There's a unique and funny detail often shared in mountain communities that children were often excused from school the day after a ramp dinner because their body odor and breath were too strong. It was the perfect excuse for neighbors to gather, share news, and strengthen the community ties that had been broken during the winter. It was an expression of solidarity and the simple joy of having abundance return. Pork ribs with sauerkraut. Pork ribs with sauerkraut is a wonderful example of the unique cultural blending in mountain cuisine. Sauerkraut was fermented from home garden cabbage using old German techniques. This technique not only preserves the vegetables, but also creates lactic acid, a probiotic that aids in easier digestion. The ribs for this dish were usually cut from wild hogs, descendants of domesticated pigs that escaped into the woods, which had a much deeper and richer flavor than any store-bought pen-raised pork. The ribs would be slowly simmered with homemade sauerkraut. The cooking process lasted hours, allowing the rich, fatty flavor of the pork to blend with the tangy, slightly pungent taste of the fermented cabbage. The result was ribs so tender they fell off the bone with just a fork. The strong tanginess of the sauerkraut perfectly balanced the pork, creating a complex flavor that modern chefs still try to replicate. This dish represents the cultural blending of mountain cuisine, Old World techniques applied to New World ingredients, resulting in a hearty heritage meal that was absolutely satisfying for those doing hard labor. Burgoo. Burgoo is not just a stew. It's a unique expression of mountain resourcefulness and community spirit. This large liquid stew is affectionately called liquid community because it was created with the purpose of feeding hundreds of people at large social gatherings. Preparing burgoo was a community effort, requiring cooperation from everyone. Neighbors would contribute whatever meat they had available. The meat could be anything from common game like rabbit, squirrel, chicken, beef, pork, to larger wild game such as deer or bear. Likewise, the vegetables added depended on the season: corn, lima beans, tomatoes, okra, potatoes, onions. Burgoo was cooked slowly over a wood fire in giant cooking pots that could hold 20 gallons or more. Due to the large scale, burgoo required constant stirring and shifts for many hours to prevent burning, turning the cooking into a community event. This stew became the centerpiece of church gatherings, political rallies, and major celebrations, showcasing the mountain people's spirit of unity and ingenuity in organizing and feeding large numbers. It's proof that food isn't just eating, it's a profound social activity. Persimmon bread. When the leaves started turning color and the first cool air arrived, the mountain people would wait for the wild persimmons to ripen. Persimmon bread is not just a seasonal dish, it's autumn condensed into a loaf. Wild Appalachian persimmons, which are smaller and more flavorful, are only harvested after the first frost, when they are perfectly ripe and abundant on the trees. Preparing persimmon bread requires care and patience. The gathered persimmons must go through the process of pressing through sieves to create a fine pulp, removing the skin and seeds. Once the pulp is obtained, it is mixed with flour, sugar, eggs, and warm spices. The finished bread is deep orange, dense, moist, with a texture somewhere between banana bread and pound cake. This dessert was popular not only for its rich flavor, but also for its practicality. It could be stored for many weeks, and many believed it tasted better the longer it sat as the flavors blended and deepened. Persimmon bread was a sweet way to take advantage of nature's bounty before winter set in. It shows the people's connection to the cycle of nature, knowing exactly when to harvest for the best flavor. Corn silk tea. The mountain philosophy of waste nothing, use everything is best exemplified by corn silk tea. While city folks threw away the corn silk, the fibers, as trash after shucking the ears, mountain families knew they held powerful medicine. After shucking the corn, women carefully saved the silks. They were spread out on screens and sun-dried for preservation. When needed, a handful of dried corn silk was steeped in boiling water for about 10 minutes to create a tea. This was a familiar and safe remedy used to treat urinary tract issues, swelling, and women's issues, especially at a time when Western medicine was hard to get or unavailable. This warm, gentle tea is an example of how mountain people relied on nature to care for their family's health. Notably, modern science has confirmed that corn silk contains compounds with real therapeutic properties. Validating the traditional Appalachian medical knowledge, this tea is clear proof of the wisdom of the ancestors in turning seemingly useless things into useful remedies. Hoover Stew. This thin, watery stew is a sad symbol of the Great Depression era, born from empty pantries and creative desperation. The bitter name Hoover Stew was coined to mock President Herbert Hoover for his perceived ineffectiveness in dealing with the economic crisis of the 1930s. This was a last-ditch effort to provide nutrition and help families survive the darkest days. The dish started with the most basic ingredients they could find: diced potatoes and onions, if available. Then they added whatever vegetables were at hand, even undesirable ones like turnips, carrots, cabbage, and even foraged dandelion greens. Meat was a luxury. The stew might only have bacon grease, a repeatedly boiled ham bone, or the cheapest cuts of stored meat. Everything was simmered in water with salt, pepper, and wild herbs for flavor. Though watery and simple, this stew somehow filled bellies and lifted spirits during tough times, and it was aptly called the original stone soup of American hardship. Hoover Stew became the great equalizer of the American crisis, showing the resilience of the people when faced with extreme poverty. If you love this content, please hit like and subscribe to the channel to discover more trips back into memory lane with us. Scrapple. Scrapple is not just a breakfast dish. It's considered a representation of traditional resourcefulness that turned pork scraps into breakfast gold. This dish originated with the Pennsylvania Dutch in the 1600s and is proof that no part of the animal was wasted during the family's annual hog butchering. The process of making scrapple requires skill and patience. They simmered pork scraps, organs, and bones until the meat fell apart and was mushy. Then, the meat was chopped finely and the cooking liquid strained and returned to the pot. Next, they whisked cornmeal and spices into this cooking liquid, stirring constantly and cooking until the mixture thickened like porridge. This hot mixture was poured into loaf pans to set. Once cooled, scrapple was sliced thick and fried in a skillet until it was crispy on the outside and soft, smooth inside. Scrapple provided a hearty breakfast that could fuel a full day of farm work. This preparation process is a combination of preservation and culinary art. This wasn't poor people's food, it was resourceful cooking, making the absolute most of available resources. This dish was often served alongside eggs and pancakes, creating an essential traditional breakfast. Creamed corn on toast. During the hard times of the Great Depression and War, when the pantry was almost empty, creamed corn on toast was the Mountain family's cozy and simple answer to the question, "What's for dinner tonight?" This dish is a great example of American ingenuity, turning basic ingredients into a filling meal. The dish relies on a basic white sauce, roux. The woman would melt butter, whisk in flour, and then slowly add milk until the sauce thickened. Next, they stirred canned or fresh corn kernels into the sauce mixture, seasoning with salt, pepper, and sometimes a little sugar to boost the corn's natural sweetness. Just canned corn, milk, and old bread were enough to create a filling and satisfying meal. The creamed corn was served over thick slices of toasted bread. The toast soaked up the sweet, creamy sauce, creating an appealing soft texture. Creamed corn on toast was more than just a meal. It was comfort that could soothe both body and spirit during difficult times. This is one of those dishes that children often looked forward to on those simple, warm, creamed corn nights. Victory Garden Soup. Victory Garden Soup is a tasty symbol of the sacrifice and ingenuity of the home front during World War II. With commercial supplies prioritized for soldiers overseas, families grew their own vegetables in victory gardens to support the war effort and cope with wartime shortages. This patriotic soup was made from whatever vegetables were ready for harvest from the home garden. The recipe was a flexible mix: tomatoes, carrots, beans, corn, squash, potatoes. Onions were sautéed, chopped vegetables added, and then covered with water or homemade broth. The dish was slowly simmered until the vegetables were tender and the flavors blended deeply. This soup had no fixed recipe other than the abundance of the garden. Every spoonful of soup was a small act of patriotism, demonstrating the resilience and unity of Americans during difficult days. Vinegar Pie. It might sound strange, but vinegar pie was a miraculous dessert born during the Great Depression. At a time when fruit, eggs, and butter were luxuries, vinegar pie became a clever solution to satisfy a sweet craving. The astonishing thing is that this simple pie tastes exactly like lemon meringue pie. Vinegar pie only needs 3 basic ingredients: sugar, flour, and white vinegar, with water to create a custard-like filling. White vinegar is the crucial ingredient, providing the same bright tartness that lemon would have. The mixture is then poured into a pie crust and baked. Vinegar pie represents Depression-era ingenuity at its peak, proving that sweetness doesn't require wealth, but resourcefulness. It's a reminder that even when everything is against you, you can still find small joys. Some more advanced versions even included meringue, beaten egg whites to lighten the filling. This pie is a wonderful testament to the art of survival cuisine. These forgotten foods are more than just meals. They are cultural heritage, encapsulating the resourcefulness and resilience of our grandparents' generation. If this video brought back memories worth keeping for you, please share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can preserve these precious historical stories together.